Good evening. It is now 7 o'clock on Wednesday, August 2nd, 2023. I now call this meeting to order of the Aransas Pass ISD Board of Trustees. This evening, we'll have Mrs. Hill lead us in our pledges and Mr. Rector in our invocation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for each person who are here this evening and surround us with your love and protection. We thank you for the many blessings you continue to bestow upon us. We come there asking your blessings upon this special call meeting and our budget workshop. We ask all that we ask in the powerful name of Jesus Christ. For his sake we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. At this time is where we would recognize public for any public testimony. And there are none tonight. And so you see some new faces here. And at this time, we'd like to officially welcome our new Business and Finance Director, Ms. Melinda Chapa. Welcome. This is her first official APISD Board of Trustees meeting. So thank you for joining the Panther Nation family. We appreciate you being here and all the work that you've done leading up for today already. So she's hit the floor running, so thank you. Also, we have our acting superintendent, Mr. Wayne Bennett. So this is his official. I know he's filled in for Mrs. Cook here and there, but thank you for accepting to help the district move forward and continue this transition and accepting to be our acting superintendent. We also have, Mrs. Chapa is here because we had our former business finance director retire, Ms. Cheryl Stansberry. She couldn't be here tonight? Nope, okay. But we just want to take a minute to acknowledge Mrs. Stansberry because although we have many dedicated and wonderful, amazing employees throughout this district, there are certain positions or roles that work directly with the Board of Trustees and sit here meeting after meeting, workshop after workshop. And so Mrs. Stansberry has done that for she's been with the district for 35 years. And of those 35 years, she has sat here with the board for 24 years. So although she is not here with us this evening, please let's give her just a round of applause.
I would like to ask Mr. Terry Stansberry, when you get home, just tell your lovely wife that we really appreciate working with her.
Well, I'll tell her something.
I see it. Then you can tell her your part later.
One other thing that we will ask Mr. Stansberry to do for us is the Board of Trustees just wanted to give Mrs. Stansberry a token of our appreciation, and I'm going to read it here.
Or do you want to save it for the next regular meeting? I'll make sure she's here.
You want to do that? You can get her here? Okay.
That's what?
Yeah, she'll come for that.
Next Monday?
Yes?
Yes, just a few days from now.
14th.
If she's available? So you want to read it then, folks? Okay.
I
can
think
save it.
it'd be nicer if she was here.
Yeah.
Definitely. But I didn't know what her personal plans were, and I didn't want
Well,
to.
she thought about coming tonight, but she
Okay.
didn't want to get in trouble with the law if she was to volunteer anything.
Okay. Yeah. No, we wouldn't expect her to do any work. She's just going to be a guest, and then she's
You don't know
as
her.
the public can attend any of our public meetings. That certainly that extends to her as well. But what he's referring to is those under
I'll
our
tell her to be here on
TRS. No, sir. Yes, definitely. We do not want to.
I'll tell her to be here on the 14th.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. All right, so now we're going to move on through our agenda. We do have an action item, and that is consider and approve resolution amending authorized tax pool representatives. Mr. Bennett?
Okay. This is a resolution that would basically remove Mrs. Cook's name and Mrs. Stansberry's name as authorized representatives to tax pool, and would add Melinda Chapa and my name to it to be authorized representatives to draw on tax pool.
So this is some housekeeping business that we need to do, and this is something that requires the board's action to make those updates and changes to take care of that appropriate business. Any questions, trustees? Okay, do we have a motion to approve the resolution amending authorized tax pool representatives of Mrs. Chapa and Mr. Bennett to replace Mrs. Stansbury and Mrs. Cook?
So
Right.
moved.
Second.
Okay, who was that?
Stansbury.
Terry.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Stansbury, second by Mr. Mullinex. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. The motion carries. Our next item of business is to consider and approve the 21st Century Grant Texas ACE program budget. Mr. Bennett?
Okay, I've asked Shelley Dominguez to come share the budget with us and answer any questions you might have over that,
Okay.
for the ACE program.
And you should have in your packet the budget sheet that shows, basically how the budget is going to be laid out.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Dominguez? In our budget packet,
It's on the,
oh, there it is, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, well, welcome. We appreciate you coming and presenting. If you will, for the viewing and listening audience, if you will, please come to the mic. Okay, thank you.
So just a little bit of background. The way that this budget was developed was a lot of research went into this. Applications, reviewed multiple applications and looked at how their budgets were set up, what they allocated their money towards. So I tried to make ours comparable to give us the best chance of success for getting the grant and to make sure our budget was reasonable. Also, certain positions are required with this grant. A project director is a requirement of the grant. Site coordinators for each site are requirements for the grant. And a community or family engagement specialist is a requirement of the grant. And besides that, of course, you have to have the teachers to work with the students. So you can see the majority of the budget is going to those salaries that we're going to need to run this program. We also have some budget money in services and training. And this grant is renewable for up to 5 years, so this is for 1 year. We also have materials budgeted in the next section, and these are just rough estimates of what we're going to need. And then our busing and conference travel are other operating costs. These are basic projections of what we're going to need to do the grant and to run the program. We have not gone through total negotiation yet with TEA, but they are not going to reduce us or anything like that. They will just look at what we have, and they may suggest us to move something from one thing to another or something like that within the grant. But once we go through that, then this will be complete. But they accepted our application as is with this budget, so I feel pretty confident in that it's going to be solid and that it's a reasonable budget.
Is this like the after-school program that we're going to do that allows our kids to go to, yeah,
Yes, sir.
that's new?
Yes.
Yeah.
The ACE program, this was written in partnership with AP for Youth, and so this will take the place of the latchkey program, and of course none of our kids will have to pay for it, and we'll have many more students be able to participate in this program. It also will fund our summer program, so our after-school and our summer.
Like our extreme program we've been doing?
Yes.
Out of ESSER money, now we just got funding for it.
Mhm.
And we've publicized that, I'm sure we've publicized that out to the community already, right?
Yes.
Appreciate it. They're probably happy to hear it, so it's free babysitting.
It was in the paper this week.
Huh?
It was in the paper this week.
Paper, Facebook, and Channel 6 did a story yesterday?
Yes.
Yesterday.
If you will you just tell us some of the major things that the parents can expect their children to experience within the program?
Okay, great. So with this program, we provide enrichment activities for the students. We focus a lot on STEM, so science, technology, engineering, math. They could be doing arts and crafts. They also will have time to do some homework completion and have assistance with that. And besides that, there will be tutorials going on. So some of our students will need that extra assistance, and we'll have a small ratio, a 3-to-1 ratio for the tutoring portion. So the student to teacher ratio is 15-to-1, or student to staff ratio is 15-to-1. So they will have plenty of guidance and safety while they're there, and plenty of things to do, engaging things to do.
Okay.
Now, you talk about the tutoring, is that for the classroom curriculum they're gonna be doing in the classroom, or is it a combination of the classroom plus the STAR that they may need to make up on? Can we do both of them combination? The kids that may be struggling as far as the testing wise, it may be, you know, like some deal, we need to get them up to speed for the next year, we can use those funds for both?
Well, we consider them, the tutoring is based on, with the new legislation like House Bill 4545, and then the next legislation that came out, which is, I think, is it 1416? I can't remember the number, but that builds upon that. It does look at students who did not pass STAR, so those are the students who will be targeted for tutoring. That's who we will work to address, the students that are in that after-school program for the tutoring services.
So it's mainly for STAR tutoring, not for classroom curriculum, for helping in the classroom?
Right. The classroom curriculum would be more like, but the classroom curriculum, it's kind of, you know, we're teaching the TEKS, and the TEKS the STAR tests the TEKS. So I would say, yeah, we're not teaching toward a test, even though we are, because that's the STAR is a TEKS-based test. We're not teaching necessarily how to do a multiple choice exam. We're teaching the content of the test, the skills that are required in order to master that test for the tutoring, if that answers your question.
Right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions or comments, trustees? Any other remarks, staff? Okay.
We're just really excited that we got this grant. We're able to do this for our students and our families.
Yes, it's wonderful, not just while during the school year, but continuing on in the summer. And so this is exciting and a wonderful opportunity at no expense to our parents and guardians, so our families.
Yes.
Thank you, Mrs. Dominguez.
You're welcome.
All right then, so do we have a motion to approve the 21st Century Grant Texas ACE Program budget?
So move.
We have a motion by Mr. Rector. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Mullinax. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The motion passes. Next item is to now then consider and approve granting the acting superintendent the authority to hire for the budgeted positions in this 21st Century Grant Texas ACE program. Mr. Bennett?
Yes, ma'am. Okay, in order for us to get started on the first day of school, we will need to start hiring pretty quickly. And that includes a director, 2 site coordinators, a community engagement, and then the teachers. Not sure the exact number of that yet, but we will need to get those hired as soon as possible. And if we waited till the next board meeting for that to be approved, those hires to be approved, we wouldn't be able to get started when we need to. So that's why we're bringing this to you tonight to ask, our recommendation is to allow me to make those hires so we can get started.
Now, these hires are going to be additional people to our staff that may be additional job after school that they'll be taking that over, or it's just new people coming in that are brand new, that are not
It's a
part of the
mix.
district?
Some of the teachers will be our teachers, the site coordinator, the family community engagement person are outside. Probably we've had it posted now, the required days. It's all, we've already had these positions posted, so
You got people responding, you got applicants already?
I believe so, yes.
Yes, we do have applicants.
Mhm.
Okay, that's good. Any other board comments or questions? Any further remarks, staff? Okay.
I make a motion that we grant the acting superintendent authority to hire the budgeted positions in the APISD Texas ACE program.
Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Mullinex, second by Mrs. Hill. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Well, congratulations on securing this, the ACE grant, and we wish you well. Thank you. All right then. So if there's nothing further regarding action items, the time now is 7:16. And we will now adjourn the special meeting and open our budget workshop. The budget workshop is for our upcoming school year, 2023 to 2024. And so, Mrs. Chapa, Mr. Bennett, you now have the floor. Thank you, Mrs. Dominguez. Thank you, Blaze. While we're transitioning, we also, Mrs. Cook unfortunately could not, she was required to be somewhere else, and so she couldn't come by and say goodbye, but we wish her well. She retired from public education after 33 years. 5 of those years with us here in Aransas Pass City, sitting at this table as our superintendent. So, all right, then are we now ready for the budget discussion?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
We have in your packet to look at, you have a cover sheet, and then you have a budget workshop agenda that Ms. Chapa will use. She'll go, that'll give you some guidance there, how she's gonna go over that. The information that we have is, as you all know, you've done this before, is that the school budgets are a projection of estimates of the information that we gathered through the summary of finance through the year, and the proposed taxes and things like that. This year in the legislature, they included $18 billion in property tax relief reforms effective for the current tax year that is supposed to give some relief to property and taxpayers. They had over $12 billion to buy down tax rates with a regular compression and an additional 10.7 cents buy down on that compression. There is going in November an election to consider a $100,000 homestead exemption, which currently it's at $40,000 homestead exemption. And these will have, all this information has direct impact on the tax rates, as you can see on the handout. And what we've done is we've prepared the budget on the $100,000 homestead exemption. Ms. Chapa and Ms. Stansberry when they worked the numbers, looking at these, when they did it both ways, the difference wasn't enough to go with the 40. The $100,000, we're still in good shape if that doesn't. But it passed last time by over 85% passing, so it probably is going to pass. So that's why we have these numbers like this, and Ms. Chapa will now present those to you.
Before doing that, just for our viewing audience, we are receiving this information for our trustees. The information that we previously reviewed has changed, and I just want to say thank you to the staff for taking the information, the numbers. We had to wait for the certified roll to come in from a couple of counties, and so once that was received by our district, they have been working nonstop so that they could update us tonight with what we're going to now hear from Ms. Chapa. But oh, I thought someone was coming in. Just somebody there. Okay. Okay. So again, we thank you for all your work in preparing. And now if you'll go ahead and take us through
Okay.
where we're at this point.
Back at the July board meeting, the July 26th first budget workshop that Ms. Stansberry presented to you, those were based on preliminary values. And now we have certified values. Many of the properties that were under protest have already been resolved. Because this year there was a large number of protests because the values drastically increased, there's still some that are still under ARB review, but this is the best numbers that they could give us by the July 25th certified deadline. So these are the numbers we are working with on the certified values. And when Ms. Stansberry and I ran the numbers on a 40,000 and on the 100,000 exemption, they were both the same. On the 40,000 exemption, we will get more money from the local taxpayers and less from the state. And when we run the 100,000 homestead exemption, we get less from the local taxpayers, but more from the state. So it almost evens out when we ran both of the templates. If you look at the long sheets, back on the July 26th, we compared last year's certified values to this year's preliminary values. Now I'm here to present to you the certified values. We have property values in 3 counties. And out of those 3 counties, our total property value certified is $1,750,690,094. That has slightly increased from what had previously been presented to you through the preliminary values back on the July 26th. On the July 26th, what was presented was $1,740,000,000. So it's a slight increase from preliminary to certified. If you look in the green column at the very bottom, now this is taking away the projected 100,000 homestead exemption. So we're going to see less money here, as this is now the taxable amount with 100,000 homestead exemption. And the amount here now is $1,275,246,990. When we presented the preliminary, it was a bit higher. It was $1,396,000. And we had a 23% value differentiating from the certified of last year to the preliminary. Now, if you look at this green line across, it's no longer 23%. Now you see 12.3418%. So we're rounding that off to 13% when we do our calculations. It's a 13% increase from prior year. That's even with the 100,000 homestead exemption. On the next page in pink, we had previously presented to you a higher M&O tax rate. And now how Mr. Bennett told you, there's we call it the MCR. The maximum compressed rate. The maximum compressed rate the Senate Bill 2 passed saying drop your M&O tax rate by 10.7 cents. So you're going to see a lower M&O tax rate, and our proposed M&O tax rate with the 5 golden pennies is 0.669200. The INS, we're proposing the same tax rate as last year with a total tax rate of 0.805723. If you look at the far right hand corner, you see how we compare from last year to this year, that we are dropping the tax rate by 0.1854, the savings to the taxpayers on the tax rate of the school district. In yellow, at the very far right, we have our tax levy based on values of 9,290,161. If we add back the frozen values, and these may change as well once the 100,000 homestead exemption gets applied. What I am told is that they're going to unfreeze and then freeze the values of property owners over 65 years and older, so that frozen value may slightly change. So in blue, we have our estimated tax levy set at 10,273,235. In our history, we have collected at a 99% tax rate, including delinquent. So the total local maintenance and interest and sinking that we collect at 99%, including delinquent, is 10,455,503. Now, that is broken up between the local maintenance and the interest and sinking. So that amount on the local side, the 8,697,196.73, you're going to see it on our next page. Here, we can go to the next page. So our district is more or less a 50-50 district. We collect 50% from our local taxpayers and we get 50% from the state. So in the top section, our local tax collections is same amount, 8,447,197, with delinquent taxes estimated at 250,000. Penalty and interest, we collect about 175,000. So total local monies we are projecting for this year is 8,872,197. Interest income, we're earning 5% at our tax pool. We're estimating a higher amount from prior year of 155,000. Miscellaneous income 50,000. Athletic receipts 60,000. So total local income we're estimating at 137,197. If you see to the far right, it's less revenues in comparison to last year, because this is at the 100,000 homestead exemption. We're going to see this amount gain in the state aid. Now, when we go to the state aid, we are projecting on a projected ADA enrollment. You see the number at the top of 1,581 kids, average daily attendance. So we're estimating 1,700 kids at a 93% attendance rate. That's where we arrive at the 1,581 ADA. With that amount that was inputted into the formulas, we did not receive additional funding in state aid through our student populations. So on the first sections, the only growth in Tier 1 from last year to this year is because we had increased student populations within the programs, such as additional students in special ed, dyslexia, The regular size, they're minimal due to the number of students in the programs. Overall, for the total cost of Tier 2 is $14,209,624. There in red, you see a less local fund assignment. And if you compare it to last year, you see that the amount has dropped. Last year, we had a local fund assignment of $9,155,566. Now we have a local fund assignment of $6,984,900. That is where the state is giving us the monies back for the funding that we lost from the tax collections that we would have collected if there would not have been a homestead or the decrease in tax rate, reduction in tax rate. Overall, the total state aid, and that's highlighted in yellow, overall, we will receive $8,400,903. We have a TRS on behalf of $954,000. So together, the state and local income, we are projecting $18,492,100. We also get some federal funds as well, in addition to the local and state of $245,000. So the bottom number at the very bottom, our total income for next year, we're estimating at $18,737,100. The number that you see on your far right, the $1,628,540, that is the additional revenues that we will have for next year. So that takes us to the next slide, the next page.
Before leaving that, on that very bottom of this sheet that we're about to advance from, on the federal income, there's just a reminder that you'll notice there's no ESSER anymore. So our 2023 to 24 school year will be the first year coming out of ESSER.
And our enrollment was around 1,700 at the end of school, right?
1,700.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
and our attendance rate was around 94%, I think, something like that.
Last year it was 93. We budgeted
For
this
93%.
budget at 93, being conservative.
Yeah, hopefully it's better this year, so we'll be better off, but at least we're not gonna go in the hole.
We're gonna
Worst
set
case.
attendance rates.
And for our viewing public, we do that because if we budgeted at 100% attendance, knowing that realistically that doesn't happen, that 100% of our kiddos are in class all at the same time. If we budgeted at 100% and we know that our history and the trend is not 100%, then we would have additional revenue budgeted that we'd never realize to use to help offset expenses for the district.
And the state will take it back.
And the state will take it back. All right, please continue.
Going into the next page, if you recall back on the July 26th meeting, the projected increase in local revenues with our first projections before the state passed Senate Bill 2, we only had about $1,100,000. Now we have $1,628,540, and we have budgeted 2 local savings into this budget. There is a contract that we had for janitorial services, Falk Elementary, at the request of our maintenance director. He has requested if we could cancel that contract, and with his staff, he will be able to fulfill the janitorial services at that campus, that this contract is no longer needed.
Will that be requiring additional employees or hires?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
He's worked it to where he's allocated the staff based on square feet of buildings and classroom sizes. So he's reallocated his staff to be able
Gonna
to.
reallocate people from other campuses to work over there, so
Moving some more
cover
to
the
Fox.
thing. So we had like too many employees at some of those campuses, so.
So the restructuring of the staff and allocated hours by campus, that's going to allow for the district to discontinue the outsourcing of janitorial services, which is this contract. Okay.
This had previously been mentioned at the last budget workshop meeting. We have local salary changes for next year of $119,376. And what that savings is we've had staff that has left the district and we have new staff replacing, some retiring and some new. And the difference in salaries between those two, we are calculating in a rolling amount of $119,376. This amount is increasing. We have not included the new hires of this summer, so that amount will be a bit higher. So when we're able to get a final budget, whatever additional funding that we have in the savings, we'll be able to grow that last line that I'll get to in a minute, the air conditioner replacement plan. Now we go into our cost. And I wouldn't say this one is a cost because the next one were salaries that we were previously paid out of ESSER, because last biennium, the state didn't give us additional state funds. What they stated is use your ESSER funds to help supplant your local budget. So we had to pay staff out of the ESSER that we had currently had been paying out of local. So in this line item, we're bringing back those salaries into the local budget from ESSER, and that cost is going to be $831,956. The projected net savings of the local salary changes of the $119,376 and the salaries going into local at 10% payroll benefits, we're estimating an additional $71,258 for payroll benefits of the net of those two. Our property insurance premium, we're currently paying about $1,100,000. We're estimating an additional 20% increase, and we won't get that new premium amount bill till I believe it's December when we get that new contract. So we're putting into the budget already an additional $240,000 where the premium is going to increase, and that is reviewed through our current carrier, insurance carrier.
Now, is Carlos, that's your insurance, you know, if they gave us any projection what it might be, 20% going to cover that?
We went with his projection, sir.
Okay.
So the carrier's projection, they're letting us know that we can anticipate a 20% increase this coming fall of when our insurance premium will be due for our various insurance coverages.
Yes.
So that's the total.
On the next two items, with additional funding for this school year, we are looking at our salaries and we are proposing a 2% of midpoint pay increase for contracted staff and a proposed 75-cent pay increase for hourly staff. A 0.75 pay increase for hourly staff more or less rounds to about a 5% increase for hourly staff. So that would cost an estimated $223,124. On the next item, and if we see our pay schedules, all staff is on a step pay schedule. So this is an annual cost that we have every year that includes all staff with the exception of administration and administration clerical. They're not on a step schedule, but all other staff are on a step schedule, and that annual cost is $109,950. With the increase in costs for the pay raises, now we got to add benefits at 10%, so it's an additional $33,807 for the benefit cost. After reviewing the budget, there's still funds available, so we looked at addressing some of our needs, and we looked at our technology plan to where we did a one-to-one initiative for our students using ESSER funds. Now we are using local funds, since we no longer have ESSER, to be able to maintain an annual replacement plan. And in speaking to our technology director, the figure that was given to me for instructional technology equipment to maintain a 5-year plan for a yearly amount of $114,500. The next one, the bus replacement plan. The cost of a bus is about $130,000. This would be replacing our oldest bus, that is a 2003. And the last time we purchased a bus was in 2017. One of our plans is to be able to finance 3 of them. The interest rate is low. Finance 3 of them, bring in 3 of them brand new, so we could replace 2 of the 2003s and 1 of the 2004 buses, have 3 brand new buses, and make a payment of $130,000 for 3 years. After that, we'll maintain having a line item for bus replacement to where the oldest bus is only 12 years old. We have 12 buses. That way, we have a new bus every year. Right now, it's like to catch up, get 3 up front. And the interest rate is low right now. And looking to see what funding was still available, we've never had an AC replacement plan. When an AC breaks down, some of them cost $65,000, some of them cost $20,000. But when one of those expensive ACs come, we have to come before you and ask for a budget amendment and bring in from fund balance because we don't have allocated funds for AC replacement plan. So what additional funding was left, we added it to an AC replacement plan, and we're putting in $98,321. So from the projected revenues that we have of the $1,628,000, this is our budget to where these are our needs, and this is where the money will be placed. If there's any questions?
I got one question real fast. You know, because Wayne's now the acting superintendent, okay, so, you know, his salary is going to remain the same, or we give him a stipend, or is that figured into the budget? Or because we're going to have, you know, he's doing a different job than what he was as assistant superintendent. He's now the acting superintendent,
Yes.
and we don't have the superintendent's salary like we're paying for 6 months. You know, do we have that figured in the budget somehow for some type of stipend for him? You know,
If I may, without going into personal matters, just in general, the acting role for our district traditionally has had a stipend. So, of course, with him becoming acting as of yesterday, then continuing that into the new fiscal year, that cost would have to be as part of the budget because that's our realistic cost of having an acting superintendent. So,
so I guess something we have to figure as a board is what a stipend is going to be and add that to the budget, correct? I mean,
Yes. And that's calculated, the 119,376, it's a rolling budget. There is going to be additional savings with teachers that we brought in this summer with the ones that left the district. There is additional savings there. There's savings in the superintendent cost for the number of days when there is only one employee acting superintendent. So there's savings there as well. So that number will increase.
and so we can, when we have our next executive session when we're talking about our transition for the acting superintendent and the process to arrive at a permanent seated superintendent, we can continue that dialogue in our next or closed session rather. Any other comments or questions regarding any of the items here on the list? Again, these are additional revenues that the district can anticipate, that our staff has conservatively projected, including the anticipated November 23 election, that voters will consider whether or not they want the homestead exemption currently at 40,000 or they want one at 100,000. So, so for folks who might say, give me the 100,000, that is something that the preliminary budget has already taken that in consideration, correct? Is that what you told us earlier? So that way we would not have to come back in November and do a budget amendment.
Couple more slides, couple more pages to review
Kind
with
of,
you.
what'd you say? Oh, he said worst case scenario.
I have some questions. Sorry. On our technology replacement plan, you guys know I was coming for it. Is our budget this year conducive with us still being 1-to-1 as far as Chromebooks and the increase in students?
Well, what we're going to do, it is, there were a lot of those Chromebooks taken home daily and probably not used. A lot of them were broken beyond repair.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're going to try out to start the year is we'll probably do it as a checkout at the campus, keep them on campus as much as possible. If they're needed, they'll be checked out. So at any given time, if every teacher is assigned, there will be enough to have a Chromebook for everyone. But just them having them to take them home and just, not use or toss them aside, or things happen.
Absolutely.
So we're going to try to minimize that. So that should help with the replacement plan, which Mr. Brew has some percentages of what it takes, and we were actually going to ask he and Mr. Diven to come to the next board member and kind of meeting and kind of go over their replacement plans. We heard the bus replacement. That's kind of where we're at right now. If this all goes through the way we'd like to do the bus replacement plan. And he's also working on mapping out, getting an overview of each campus and mapping out the age of each unit where they are and kind of getting that ball rolling. But just his general maintenance on those is going to add life to them. Same with the buses, but they are in need, we know where we are on buses and some AC units. But on the internet or the technology plan, yeah, Mr. Brew has given the numbers. He and Ms. Chapa talked, and that's where he gave us this number. And then with us going to a checkout system instead of them just going home every day, we're hoping that also saves some lives, some Chromebook lives, and adds to it and lowers the cost of the upkeep. Bundle that all together.
And are they still intending to do all those repairs in-house? I remember when he came and gave our technology update, they said they were trying to do that kind of in-house to save money. But I know with 1,700 kids, that could be a lot of time and effort for our small technology staff to handle. So, what I'm digging at basically is I was just looking at this number with the amount of Chromebooks currently, our current attendance, our current projection of students, and enrollment, and thinking we may need to consider a 3-year plan because as we bring in more students, that cost it's going to shoot up. And currently right now in the technology, they're recommending about 3 years for the devices anyway. So just kind of thinking in the long run, because kids are going to be rough. I mean,
Right.
there's no doubt in my mind that these kids are going to be rough on these devices, and there's nothing we can really do about that. So just thinking not just 23, 24, but kind of forward thinking since we are putting some time out on those replacement plans. But that's all I had on that one. And then my next question is, I see we did some payroll benefits and premium increases on our insurance. Did we include any additional stipends for our teachers who are doing like UIL coaching or any of those services?
That's all,
Okay.
Not this time.
that's all built into their contract, isn't it?
Well, if they usually have what we've done in the past, there's a spreadsheet that has the amounts. If you coach this UIL activity, you get this much. If you're go to an event for half a day, you get this much. If it's full day, get this much. And I know when I was principal at the high school, Ms. Stansberry and I, we doubled it at one point to get it to where it is. I don't know if it's still there, if they've done some more to it since. But it's from time to time we revisit, try to keep it, up with the rest of the area as best we can. So it's probably time to look at that and just see where we're at and see what we can do with that. But right now, we don't have it.
We don't
here.
have it.
We don't have
Okay.
it listed.
Okay, I just wanted to ask, because that's one of the things that's kind of been buzzing, is that our UIL, like from the academic side, not so much our sports, but from the academic UIL side, that we're not as competitive as some of our neighboring districts. So I don't want our teachers getting antsy or feeling like they're being forgotten doing those roles, because that is still a lot of time and effort that they put in with those kids as well.
Absolutely.
That's all I had. See, nothing too bad.
I'm just gonna make a comment to piggyback on your technology question and also give a little history lesson. The Chromebooks, I remember the hassle we had getting them, one for each student. But if you remember, we had fought Hurricane Harvey and then the COVID pandemic, and there's no kids in school. So it was important for all the kids to have a Chromebook for the home learning. Hats off now that we have a takeout or checkout program, because I don't think all the kids need to take them since they are in class. So that's going to save us money in the long run as we transition to a checkout program. But the reason why all the kids had them was because of the COVID.
Oh yeah, that makes perfectly good sense. When we did some of our tours, I know the teachers had those stations and they had those kids. They kind of have implemented those Chromebooks into their blended learning approaches. So I was just curious. Okay, just to make sure that while they're implementing new practices, we're not the holdup for them to keep rolling through with that, because they're doing an excellent job. So I just wanted to make sure that all their hard work, we're backing it as much as we can. I know our budget is super tight, but
The next set of pages stapled, there's about 6 pages stapled, and we're bringing this to you early. It's a projected salaries, and as we mentioned in the budget, a 2% pay increase for contracted employees and a 75-cent increase for hourly employees, including the step, with the exception of administration and administration clerical. But we wanted to show you, these are the recommended salary scales. This was prepared by the HR department based on that increase in pay. If there's any questions.
So these are the schedules that we usually receive at our August workshop. Did you
Yes.
just prepare them
A bit earlier.
earlier for us
for
to
your
look at?
review.
And so again, these are the projections by employee group.
It's just information, right?
Right, this is consideration, and then, of course, those, we'll see this again.
For approval at our next budget workshop, at our next
Regular meeting,
meeting,
we approve the budget.
when we approve the budget. We're
I believe we're scheduled to do that, or looking at doing that at the end of August,
August
when we have everything finalized for the tax rate and,
and budget. And one of the requirements is that that we hold a public meeting. So in order to hold a public meeting, we need to put in the newspaper the notice. So we're working on the notice
okay.
to be able to meet the timelines, to be able to meet that August 28th board meeting, where we adopt the budget, the compensation plan, as well as a tax rate. And
the public hearing,
on the public hearing.
okay.
And then the last page that we have for you as part of this workshop, as board members, we review the local budget, and we also review the interest and sinking debt budget. So on the last page, there's 2 columns. The first column is if we maintain the same tax rate as we did the prior year. And since we had an increase in property value, we are able to make an additional payment for a bond defeasance, and you see it in beige on the bottom, a bond defeasance payment of $793,906.39. What a bond defeasance payment is to pay down the principal, saving taxpayers money on the interest of the note. It's like having a mortgage, like personal mortgage debt, and you do additional payments on the interest where you save interest and pay the bond and pay the mortgage at a sooner rate. This is the same thing on a bond. We're paying down the principal to save taxpayers money on the interest and pay off this debt earlier than what was anticipated. So this is maintaining the same tax rate as a prior year. If we don't maintain the same tax rate, then it would reduce the INS tax rate by 6 cents. And that would not allow us to be able to make that payment. Another reason why we want to maintain the same tax rate is it puts us in a position, since our school district relies heavily on state values, if we need to go to a TRE election, we've already collected 6 cents from a taxpayer, so we have to go out if we do for a TRE election, because schools are starting to go for those TRE elections to be able to gain additional funding, to be able to be competitive with other school districts, neighboring school districts. So TRE election, if we are able to go for one of those in the future, then the tax rate will not burden the taxpayer, because we've already have the 5 golden pennies calculated in the local, and we have another 6 cents over here on the debt service. So we already have 11 cents where we don't have to burden the taxpayer with a TRE election and having to increase the tax rate if we were to have one of those elections. It would be more or less of a wash if we'd go for a TRE election in the future, not increasing the tax rate. Or a TRE election or a bond election. So.
It would lessen the amount either way. If you did have to go up a couple more pennies, instead of taking the whole, say, 8 cents, you'd only have to do 2 cents. So.
Well, it looks like to me, though, from everything I've heard, an excellent job explaining. I think you did a good job. We're already going to lower the M&O tax because the state says you got to. So you're already saving the taxpayers money. If we left the INS like it is, make an extra bond payment, that's just going to benefit us next year. That's my opinion.
Well, it increases our rating in the bonds too, doesn't it? You know,
Right.
the faster we pay off the bond, the better our rating comes. And so we have to go out for another bond and we'll get a better rate.
Or other type of financing that, finance options that may be available to us, will be in a better position.
Well,
It's strengthening our position, like individuals strengthening your credit scores, or, you know.
right, like on your house, I mean, you want to give a good insurance rate, they're going to look at your rating, right? So if we make
Our rating, yes,
make our rating better, then maybe we'll save money in other areas besides on the bond.
We know the future's going to hold future bonds for us.
Right.
For construction somewhere down the road, so we need to better ourselves to position that in the future now where we can. give us a better
Yeah,
rate
we
for
need
the
to
bonds,
do-
we have to need it.
We need to do the best we can not to spend no fund balance and let that build up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Save that.
And so this would be our second year with the bond defeasance,
We did something last year.
as we did last year. I know we went through we had a detailed review. Any board thoughts, comments, questions?
Good job. It's good. I mean, it's kind of hard working to balance a budget with the state cutting here and that and tax rates and just all that juggling stuff and the uncertainty of predicting because things aren't still final. So there's a big uncertainty out there. So, you know, good job for the time you guys and effort the staff's put into it, to try to come up with a halfway decent budget that we have to have by August. And so, you know, so just kudos to your staff.
Ms. Stansberry helped me out. And it was perfect timing having both of us working on this together.
Especially since some of the data kind of came in the 11th hour. Having to crunch those numbers.
So as we were talking about the INS and the bond, the big B word, with the current status of our budget, from a health perspective, moving towards a bond, which we all know everybody wants a bond in the future, but how far out are we realistically if things go as planned, you know, which is a unicorn within itself, but how many years are we looking at before we would be back in that position to even do a bond? Because as you guys recall, when we did a workshop for our goals, and when we got down to the nitty gritty, we weren't liquid enough to do a bond. So with what we're currently approving, looking into the future towards a bond, what do you see as our financial,
Financial forecast?
Well, wouldn't that be one of our goals as a board?
Well, yes, we haven't
redo
done that
that.
again, but we had talked about doing a bond before, and basically what it came down to was we just weren't liquid enough in our fund balance to even be thinking about passing a
We
bond.
need to set a timeline and a goal and then make something for them to
We
work
had,
toward.
before you were on the board, we had like a 5-year plan, and part of that was doing, bonds in the future for future growth, especially at the high school, at that campus.
Yeah, the
And
high
we
school
looked
what?
at that, we looked at that campus particularly, but we just weren't physically able to do it at that time.
In 2
But-
years, the high school will be what, 50 years old?
Yeah. So, and we were looking also, and I think I don't know if you're part of that discussion or not with Ms. Cook at that time, that we looked at projecting of just adding a wing onto it and keeping as much existing structure as possible and it did that. And I think we had some kind of preliminary plans we're looking at for
We do
that.
have some preliminary plans, and I know this is the second year of the defeasance, and that's with, with some recommendations from Dusty, and I can't think of his last name.
Mhm.
Dusty, and we will be consulting him during this year.
Okay.
To maybe help us, because right now, I don't know if we could give you an absolute answer or
Right.
even
An estimation, yeah.
We need to consult him for where we are, and I think the understanding is it's probably the last year we would look at a defeasance, isn't it? I mean, just from what I've heard, talking to Cheryl and Melinda about this, so.
So the individual that, for our listening and viewing audience, we're talking about the district's financial advisor. And so since things have, the canvas financially is a little bit different, what's going on at the state level. So we may engage our financial advisor to help us maybe recalibrate our forecast and look at what options our particular district has. Now that we have a different team seated, we can take a look at when we have all of our trustees look at a time of all of us when we can convene in a workshop to revisit setting goals
The vision goal for the district, 'cause we
for
we need to do
the
that.
district, right? But
Yeah,
I
so
mean,
we
we
got-
have some, but
They'd like to
it's
do
time to,
all.
we need to go back and look to see, have that discussion if there's something that we want to modify, change altogether. So some of those had to do with our school rating and scores, and so we know now that the state is changing that formula. Financially, we have new templates for the state funding, so there's been quite a few changes since we
Yes.
had our last discussion, so.
Yes, there have.
Kind of built well, what we had back 2 years ago, and we really haven't
Mm-hmm.
revisited that in the last couple of year and a half or so,
Oh,
Yes,
currently on our bonds, we owe about $12 million. That's the 2016 bond indebtedness on the INS side. On the short term, Dusty helps us with our debt to student ratio. TEA does not want us to exceed a certain ratio, so we need to stay within that. So I'll work with him to see what that ratio is. But for the short term, one of the things that we are able to do, and we've spoken to Dusty, is a maintenance tax note. And we're eligible for $1 million maintenance tax note. And that's like on a short term of the repairs that need to be done. And we'll be addressing them this year and be able to put into the budget a payment of over 10 years on a maintenance tax note. So we're working on that
Perfect.
through a budget amendment later on during the school year.
Perfect. I just want, when you mentioned going for bonds and, you know, the other financing and that INS rate and why that was important, I just wanted to make sure that we as a board were thinking about what we know, not just what we're presented tonight, but things that we've been presented in the past, and not letting them just sit in our subconscious, but being cognitive of when she says that, what that means for
mean?
us towards our goals, what we want for the district, because that's the point of these budget meetings, is to lead up to those future goals. So I just wanted to make sure, I didn't want to throw you guys off guard into left field. I just want to make sure we're all taking those little things into consideration before we approve anything, so that we're looking at the full picture.
One more thing, food for thought while I got it on my mind.
Sure.
We might want to consider property as well.
For the purchase of property?
Yeah, we don't have no property if we want to build something big.
yeah.
We got where the old high school is and where May Allen was. That's all the
That's
property
all
we
property
got.
so, just kind of tossing around possibilities.
And
I
real
do recall
estate-
there was some discussion of how to reconfigure what we have. So the landscape would look a little bit different to maximize the existing space that we have. So those are some things you're correct that we have to look at. Financially, what can we do, but what's feasible within our landscape here in Aransas Pass. So
mean,
those are all factors that when we have the conversation, and our other two trustees
As the area
can join us.
grows, we're going to eventually hit a growth spurt.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, if we're a 4 or 5A school, what we got's not big enough.
True. Start building.
So if you're going to plan for something, you need to plan for 10, 15 years out. That's the way I bring it up.
Can't wait for growth to catch you. You gotta plan ahead for growth.
Right.
So it's not what you're supposed to do.
And there's
that's
not a
what you
whole,
gotta
like
do.
I said, there's not a
Build
whole
up.
lot of land around.
You know,
So
we've got
Yeah, there's no land.
single
around.
level schools except for Falk, or maybe double, 2-story. So, yeah. So,
I'm just food for thought.
certainly. And so, as you come up with possibilities or ideas or the what ifs, I wonder if we can. I wonder if we qualify. I wonder if that's possible for Aransas Pass. Make your notes, your questions, so that we do convene in that setting, we don't lose those ideas of possibilities or options that we need to explore. Are there any other questions on the debt service preliminary schedule that we have here tonight for the interest in seeking debt service estimated revenue for 23-24. Okay. Any other overall comments on the preliminary budget at this point from staff? Okay. So one of the things, if we go back to some of our discussion here tonight, it sounds like we can anticipate maybe at our next regular meeting, certainly at the latest at our next budget workshop, the layout on the local revenues and budget increases of the projected increase due to property values of the 1.6 million. It includes a couple of plans, guide to us. So the budget is a guide, and within the guide, there are some plans to help us utilize and maximize our resources. And there are 3 plans that were listed. We've got a good summary of the methodology for the bus replacement plan. Instead of just going out and buy one bus, that the plan would entail financing 3 buses, correct? And that the plan would be, or it's proposed that we would continue to do that. So instead of having a bus that's 16, 18 years old, the oldest shouldn't be more than 12 years. And then the technology plan, Mrs. Hill had some additional questions, but we know that we can expect, I guess, a deeper overview, okay, from the director. And then on the AC replacement plan as well,
We can talk
a little bit more description. So whether that's a presentation, whether that's a schedule, just something so that the board has a sense of what does that look like? And so we're all on the same page in understanding that money that's being, that expense to implement the plan, what does that get us? How far does that get us in the plan? These other 2 plans, it sounds like it's just going to be an annual. And then the technologist is they're looking at a 5-year at this point. And then so would it be in every 5 years, come back in, adopting a new plan?
Every year, that 114,000 will be in there.
Okay,
next 5 years.
for the next 5 years. But then once we do that, because of the growth of technology and how things change and advance, the advancements in technology, it may have look different at that point.
That's where the, like, needs assessment,
Mhm.
things like that come in and give us some direction.
Okay,
To where our
Well-
oldest laptop is not older than 5 years.
okay.
That's what that means, 5
Okay.
years.
We also had, I'm sorry, Mr. Stansbury, were you going to say something?
Well, it's like most budgets, it's gonna be a floating number every year, depending on the needs. But at least it's a start to get us, playing the same game.
It's a guide on how
Right.
we plan to spend based on the revenue that's estimated at this point in time. So if anything further changes, state, federal, what have you, then of course that's what budget amendments are for. So the other thing, since we're approaching our last workshop, just kind of glancing back over discussions that would impact the budget. We've had some trustee interest on the athletic program. What does that look like now? Where are there increases so that we can ensure that we are maintaining and sustaining programs and doing so equitably for boys and girls sports. The academic UIL question. So trustees, I just want to encourage you, if there's any other things that you would like to have information on or have better understanding, now's the time to submit those questions to give staff an opportunity to look into those, and so that they can have enough time to prepare and bring information back to us as we approach our last workshop. We probably I mean, we have other business to take care of as well, but we want to make sure that as we come out of ESSER, that it would have been nice to have more, but we don't. So we know that when we started with ESSER, that it would come to an end one day, and that, for instance, the positions that were pre-existing to COVID, that were funded with ESSER, would have to come back to the local budget. So things of that nature. So we want to make sure that there's a good understanding. Our monthly financials, we've had, an update on ESSER. That number was getting really, really low. I think there was, less than 20,000. So, so we were blessed to have those dollars while we did, but having this guide, and then once we have the opportunity to have our workshop with our advisor, to see, like I said, take a look at what our new forecast is.
Could you get our maintenance to look at, like, there's certain things like the tilt walls on the high school that we went through, and I think the junior high has the same problems, that they did some stuff at the high school to kind of reiterate those a little bit so they could extend the life of the high school a little bit further. And, I'm not sure if the junior high or any other campuses need something like that for the building wise. We need to go back and maybe put in the budget somewhere, if we got the money to do that, to make sure that at least we're maintain those buildings so they can get the best use out of them, so we don't have to, they're going to, so we don't have to go for new bond to replace them.
Robert's looking at the blunt here and lighting at the football stadium.
We're looking through a maintenance tax note on the local side to be able to pay those high price items.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you allow us, these are our best estimates that we have going into the school year. If you allow us 6 weeks to see how the first 6 weeks enrollment is after the first 6 weeks, to look at our student population, if it grew, we're estimating at 1,700. If it's more, then we'll go and see the items that you mentioned. We'll look at athletic participation from last year to this year, if it's grown, UIL, and technology. So allow us to see if there's additional revenues available after the first 6 weeks. But for now, this is the best we have going into the new year.
That's fair.
Do the best that you can with the information you have at the time,
What you
so.
gotta do is what you got.
Okay, is there anything further, trustees, regarding the budget?
I would like to say something.
Okay,
Just to the general public who are out there listening, workshops are the best time to come and ask your questions and to get involved. And when you want to know something, right now there's nobody in the audience, but we would love for you guys to be here because what we're doing is for you. So we would love that input at these times where we're not voting, and we can have conversation so that we can build something that our community wants, and make sure that we're focusing on the things that you guys desire. So when we say workshop, show up.
let's see here. For our next workshop, what was that date again? Did you, it'll be when folks can see it in the paper, the advertisement?
I believe it's going to be posted August 14th.
Around the 14th, okay. Around the 14th.
That's the next regular meeting.
Next regular meeting, right?
First day of school?
But the workshop's not till the 28th, so.
Yeah, so our workshop is where we have the public hearing,
That's when it'll be
make the
We bring
final
it to you.
decisions,
passed.
or
for
to
the
adopt the budget
Yeah, to adopt a budget.
and to the tax rate,
That's right, yep.
right,
We're gonna do it on 28th then,
August 28th, yes.
so we got that established the meeting time.
Information only at the August 14th board meeting.
Okay,
So we're gonna accept that for 28th at a certain time. We're gonna set that for a board meeting date right now, because I don't have it on my calendar right now, so we need to go ahead and do that.
and it was the 28th, but you mean set a time?
Yeah.
Let's allow Blaze an opportunity to send out, just to make sure that nothing has
14th,
changed.
set up the 14th and kind of finalize the final date. to
Yeah,
set the
we can do that, whether it's gonna be one of our 6:30 or our regular 7
Time,
o'clock.
date, whatever time. yeah.
7 o'clock seems to help those who are
14th.
trying to get here.
You gotta give 2 weeks' notice.
Yeah, that'd be 2 weeks from 14th to 28th, right?
That's only, 13 days?
So we gotta go 29th then, right?
Mrs. Stansberry and Melinda looked, I mean, that's where they timed it
It's
out.
10
to-
days.
So the 28th,
Okay.
and that is
Business days.
approximately the same date that it was done last year. You know,
So you do need to advertise the time. And we did not previously set a time?
7 o'clock?
Usually that works for the majority of our trustees.
I almost want to say, in the past, we've done a public hearing, if it precedes the board meeting, that, like, it would start at 6:30, and then the board meeting start at 7, if I remember, but that's
Okay.
up to y'all.
Okay.
It's on a Monday.
The 28th is a Monday.
Yeah.
Well, we do have time to check with our fellow 2 trustees, and so that everybody gets it on their calendar.
Well, we gotta, what's the latest date? We gotta accept the budget and the tax rate by what date?
Oh, the 28th, what I'm talking about is the time, starting at 6:30 versus 7.
Okay,
6:30, public
Public hearing,
Public
6:30,
hearing.
and then the regular meeting at 7.
so whether they show up or not, we're still gonna have to do it, right?
I mean, that shouldn't take that
It's all-
long,
we got a
'cause we've
quorum,
already talked
so we
about the
need a
budget.
quorum.
Yes, so that we can get that advertisement posted. All right, then. Any final comments for tonight's preliminary workshop?
So, ma'am, that's it.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for all the work that went into this to be able to give us, it's really a new preliminary budget based on all the state changes, things that have been occurring. So if there is nothing further tonight, we will adjourn. It is now 8:22. This meeting is adjourned. Mics are still live.
Either 23 or 22. I can't-
Don't forget about the convocation in the morning, if you could be there. Start the breakfast at 7:45, and then program about 8:30. Got the, y'all
Pledge.
and prayer.
Prayer.
Breakfast.
Shiner?
And you have pigs in a blanket.
Shiner?
Hold on a second, we're still live.